today our lesson is on solving radical equations. This is our third lesson. We've done two before. If you haven't seen those, go ahead and view those and then come back. We have a video guide to go along with this lesson as usual, so go ahead and if you haven't printed off, pause the video, print off the video guide, and then come back. So just for a quick review, going over a radical equation. Remember, a radical equation is just an equation with a square root in it. Okay, and then also for review, let's talk about how we solve radical equations. So if we have the square root of 8, or x, equals 8, to solve this, remember the opposite of a square root is to square both sides, or take both sides to the second power. So if I square both sides, that cancels out the square root, and I get x equals 64. And we're going to be using that concept today to solve our equations. So from our video guide, number 1, we have the equation, the square root of 9k minus 6 equals the square root of 4k plus 39. Draw my line to the equal sign. Now previously, we learned that we have to look outside of the square roots and we have to cancel any number that's outside of the square root first. Looking at this problem, we have no numbers outside the square root. Everything's underneath the square root. What's different is we actually have a square root on both sides, okay? Now because there's no numbers outside the square root, our first step is to cancel out the square roots. And the opposite of a square root is to square both sides. So what happens is the square root on both sides will cancel out with the exponent. And we are left with 9k minus 6 equals 4k plus 39. So all that happened was our square roots canceled out, everything underneath stayed exactly the same. So now we just have to solve for k like a regular equation. So I have a 9k on this side, a 4k on this side. I need to get those together, so I need to cancel out this 4k. The opposite would be to subtract 4k on both sides. 9k minus 4k, we have 5k minus 6 equals, the 4k's cancel, and we have 39. To get k by itself, I need to cancel out the minus 6. So the opposite would be to add 6 on both sides. They cancel. I get 5k equals 45. Almost finished. Last thing that we need to cancel is the 5. This is 5 times k, so the opposite would be to divide. Divide both sides by 5. I get k equals 9. And that's our answer for number 1. Let's take a look at number 2. We have the square root of 2x plus 9 equals the square root of 5x minus 24. Again, if we look at this problem, there's nothing outside of the square roots. Okay, all numbers are under the square root, so our first step is to cancel out the square roots. And to do that, I need to square both sides. The square roots and the squares cancel, so I'm left with 2x plus 9 equals 5x minus 24. I need to get my letters together, so I'm going to cancel out the 5x and move my letters to the left. The opposite of 5x is negative 5x. 2x minus 5x is negative 3x plus 9 equals, these cancel, and we have negative 24 that we bring down. After that, to get x by itself, we need to cancel out the plus 9. The opposite of plus 9 is subtract 9. So we subtract 9 on both sides. They cancel. Negative 3x equals negative 24 and negative 9. The signs are the same, so I'm going to add those and keep the sign of the bigger number. So I have negative 33. And my last step is to cancel out the negative 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. My answer is x equals 11. Okay, the next one, number 3. We have the square root of 14p minus 13 equals the square root of 4p plus 47. Again, looking at the problem, there's nothing outside of the square roots, so my first step is to cancel those square roots. So I'm going to square both sides. So squares and square roots cancel. I get 14p minus 13 equals 4p plus 47. I need to get my letters together. So to cancel out the 4p, I will subtract 4p from both sides. 14p minus 4p leaves me with 10p minus 13 equals 47 because the 4p's cancel. After that, to get p by itself, I need to cancel out the subtract 13. So the opposite would be to add 13 on both sides. They cancel. I get 10p equals 47 plus 13 is 60. And my last step will be to divide. Divide both sides by 10. So p equals 6 is my answer. Okay, let's do one more problem together, number 4. We have the square root of 6f plus 11 equals the square root of 13f minus 10. So to solve, draw a line through the equal sign. We realize that there's nothing outside of the square roots, so to cancel them, I'm going to square both sides. So my squares and square roots cancel. I get 6f plus 11 equals 13f minus 10. I need to get my variables together. To do that, I need to cancel out the 13f. So I'm going to subtract 13f from both sides. 6f minus 13f is negative 7f plus 11 equals, my 13f's cancel, and I get negative 10. To get f by itself, I need to cancel out the plus 11, so the opposite would be to subtract 11 on both sides. They cancel. I get negative 7f equals negative 21. The signs are the same, so add them. Keep the sign of the bigger number. And my last step is to divide by negative 7. So my negative 7's cancel. Negative 21 divided by negative 7. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So my answer is positive 3. At this point, go ahead and pause the video guide. Do the next 2 problems on your own and then come back to check your answers. Okay, our answers for the last 2 problems for number 5. Remember, you need to square both sides to get rid of the square roots. Get your letters together. Cancel out the 12 on both sides and then divide. You should get that g equals positive 8. Okay, if not, check your work with mine. And number 6, square both sides. Get your letters together, get your numbers together, and then divide. You should get that r equals 13. And this is the end of our lesson on solving radical equations.